A pleasant good morning to everyone, and welcome once again to this week's edition of the Carlos Brown Show, heard exclusively right here on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com. A very beautiful Saturday morning in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Coming up on today's show, our guest menu looks like this. Corey Diaz of the Monroe News Star will join me. We'll take a look at Grambling State University, trying to get back to that championship pedigree. Corey Diaz will join me in hour number 2. But first and foremost, in hour number 1, Brandon B.J. Jones of HBCU Game Day will join me, giving us the latest information on the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference. They had their football media day yesterday, so we'll get the latest on the MEAC and their predicted order of finish. And then last but not least, in hour number 2, Charles Edmond of the Alcorn State Radio Network and our SWAC report. Didn't get a chance to talk with him last week, so I'm sure he has a lot to talk about, a lot to say. Get his thoughts and perspective on SWAC Football Media Day. Predictions, we kind of had some text messages going back and forth this week, so it should be interesting. So those are the guests. Corey Diaz of the Monroe News Star, Brandon B.J. Jones of HBCU Game Day, and Charles Edmond of the Alcorn State Radio Network. What's trending on today's show? North Carolina A&T predicted to win the MEAC football championship. Nothing new, I guess. They've really been outstanding the last few years. According to the prognosticators, they will do it again. The SWAC announces the partnership, now it's official, with CityJet Incorporated, a corporate sponsor, and that's going to be a very nice thing. A corporate sponsor, but also a chance now for the student athletes to, in some cases, be able to take that plane. A plane ride is a lot different than a bus ride, if you get in my drift. So that's what's trending on this week's edition of the Carlos Brown Show. I'm going to pull up the information, give you a little bit more information on the SWAC partnership with CityJet. But before I do that, let me, as always, say a pleasant good morning to Dr. Brother Michael Prince. Good morning, sir.
How are you? How are you today, man?
Well, I'm doing fine. Another day in the land of the living. Tomorrow is not promised. Today was not promised. So thank God there is a God.
Amen to that, my friend. Amen. You will not have an argument out of me about that one.
So I did all right on that one?
You did quite well on that one, my friend.
Well, I'm looking to pull up a little bit more information on that. And when we were at SWAC Football Media Day, it kind of was announced, but it wasn't official.
Right.
As far as CityJet Incorporated taking you where you want to go. SWAC announces partnership with CityJet Incorporated. And as we click here on live radio, we pull it up. The Southwestern Athletic Conference has announced a partnership with CityJet Incorporated to serve as the official airline provider for the league. The league's partnership with CityJet Incorporated will give conference member institutions the ability to schedule charter travel directly to sporting events, providing a benefit of significantly reduced missed class time for student athletes. So that is huge in itself right there. Let me give you one quote among a couple. The commissioner, Dr. Charles McClellan, says we are extremely excited to add CityJet as a corporate sponsor. This partnership will greatly enhance the overall student-athlete experience while giving our member institutions another viable option in regards to team and staff travel. CityJet is a well-respected and established airline provider with a first-class fleet of chartered planes and private jets. And I just think it's terrific. So I guess it's been signed and delivered now. The SWAC announced it's a partnership with CityJet Incorporated. Got to feel good about it, Brother Prince.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. I feel like the old Jeffersons theme song, Moving On Up, to the east side, But no, it's a great thing. It does reduce time. It does a lot. Being firsthand experience on traveling with the teams in the past, sometimes you would have to go through regular baggage claim just like everybody else. And I've had the luxuries of going on a charter flight, and there is a difference between night and day doing the two. So this is a huge move. It can save some time. It can get these kids to their destinations where they can get more rest in prior to their game and get more study time in prior to their games or wherever state or city that they're landing in.
Well, I would agree, most definitely. And Dr. McClellan has talked about several moves that the conference is going to make. So you got to like the direction that the conference is going in so far.
Oh, you never doubted the abilities of Dr. McClellan's leadership, and a matter of how long would it take to get things the way he would like to have them in position, even though there's still work to be done. You have to know what this guy historically has achieved at Prairie View, at Texas Southern, in the athletic director's position. And to see him with the opportunity to lead this conference, he's a product of the conference, so he understands firsthand some of the challenges as an athletic director. He understands the historical value and the branding opportunities for this conference. So right now, so far so good on everything that's moving on. Now, of course, not everything that a leader does, people are going to always line up with. That's part of the territory. But I would have to say he has a passing grade right now.
Oh, most definitely. And coming up through the ranks, the valuable experience gained as being a director of athletics at Prairie View and Texas Southern University. So he knows. He. It's not like you bringing somebody, although they have the credentials from outside the conference, but knowing the blueprint, knowing the strengths, knowing the not so much the strength or some of the weaknesses or some of the problems in the conference. That gives you a special relationship, in my humble opinion.
Absolutely. What it does, Carlos, it does this. It's just like family. Everybody in the family knows who the special person is in the family, but it still means they're still family. Now, we as family can say who the special person is, but let an outsider come in and talk about that special person, then we got a problem. You got what I'm saying? So, so when you have the likes of Charles McClellan that comes in, started off, I'm proud to say he is a PV alum. He worked as a color analyst at KPVU at some time, and he has matriculated throughout the system, as we mentioned prior, as an athletic director in administrative roles. And he's accomplished some things a lot of people don't understand. Even the new stadium that we have at Prairie View was a part of Dr. McClellan's vision of refurbing and reestablishing the old Blacksher Stadium, and it turned into the new Blacksher Stadium that we have today. So he's been very instrumental on a lot of things that has happened throughout the conference. Now it's just a matter of magnifying that, if you would, instead of the prior institution that you're working for, making things happen for all institutions involved throughout the conference.
And speaking of family, a special announcement about an hour ago, Jackson State. Oh yeah, I do show Jackson State some love.
Ooh,
Contrary to
I'm so proud of you,
what
man.
some will think.
I'm proud of you, man. Oh my God.
Yeah, Jackson State University has agreed to extend their participation in the Southern Heritage Classic through 2024. Of course, Tennessee State University agreed back in December. Now, more great football for many years to come We can't wait to see them face off on September the 14th. Now, Tennessee State and also Southern. Jackson State has not been doing as well as of late. We're talking football here, but then it's interesting how things will match up one way and then match up in another way. Well, Southern and Alcorn State hasn't went well in that aspect. So with Jackson State now, got this deal to 2024, and some conversation on social media was like, why not do it at home and home? Well, I can't get into that, but maybe somebody from Jackson State will send me an email at thecolosbrownshow@gmail.com or through the Facebook Messenger. I am the Colos Brown Show. You can leave a comment. But that's one of their bigger games.
Oh, yeah.
That's a big game, and it's a plus for Jackson State to ink with Tennessee State. And in November,
right,
Jackson State will get it on.
I want to say that Tennessee State game against Jackson State is such a rich rival, and I think that was one of the concerns that when Tennessee State made the leap to the conference that they're in right now, there was a concern, will we still play this game? They said, beyond a shadow of a doubt, we want to make sure this game continues. So that's a huge announcement coming out of Jackson State. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. So that's etched in stone, the 2024. Coming up at about 10:40 on today's show, I'll visit with Brandon B.J. Jones of HBCU Game Day. We'll take a look at MEAC football predicted order of finish. Also, they released, and this was held in Norfolk, Virginia, July 26th, which was yesterday. North Carolina A&T picked to win the MEAC football championship. I don't think anybody is surprised, but one of my questions is going to be to Brandon is which team has a legitimate shot, the best chance of dethroning North Carolina A&T? And I know what the predicted order finish says.
Right. Well, I have a unique relationship with head football coach Willie Simmons, and they were picked second, I believe, in the conference. Third in the conference. Bethune-Cookman was picked second. He is very comfortable with what they're bringing back, and he thinks that despite the storms that they've been facing in Tallahassee, he says they're going to shock some people. So it's going to be interesting to see.
Well, and every game will have to be thought of in that capacity. Now they start off on the Thursday night. They play up in competition. We know what that's all about. And I've got some material from SWAC Football Media Day. I'm gonna just look at the first. See, to me, September doesn't tell the total story.
Right.
As far as how the season goes, but if you just look at some of the institutions, September, when we talked to Coach Hendrick, he said he'll know about his football team by the end of September.
That's right.
And that's kind of like the first benchmark. Now, I'll say this, Brother Prince. If you're playing up the first couple of games, that's going to be tough. But I've said over the past few weeks, don't let that, if you start off 1-2, 0-2, 0-3, and if you're playing up, don't get disappointed about that, because you still have your ultimate goal is to win your conference championship. But boy, you look at some of the teams in the conference, they got some, man, that first 4 weeks, 5 weeks in some cases, man, it's pretty tough.
It's not only tough, Carlos, but and I hate to keep beating this dead horse, but you got to put an asterisk by Texas Southern and Prairie View, because that is a conference, a division game within the conference, and whoever loses that game is going to be, I'm not going to say directly behind the 8 ball, but slightly behind the eight ball because there's instant pressure right now. And I believe it's going to actually be more pressure on Prairie View because Texas Southern, the way their schedule is looking, they don't have another conference game for 4 or 5 weeks after that initial start on the Labor Day Classic. So it's got a lot of weight bearing these first 4 or 5 weeks of the season, not only to see what type of team you have in the case of other sister schools, but for Prairie View and Texas Southern on where they're going to be within the division. Because normally in September, early October, you kind of get in the feel. But by the time Prairie View gets to early October, they would have played Texas Southern. They would have played Grambling because they played Grambling at the State Fair Classic. So they could be 0-2 going into October conference-wise, which could be a death grip for the rest of your season.
Well, I'll say it. All the pressure's on Peavy.
Oh, it's no doubt.
In game one, Texas Southern is playing, as Charles Edmonds would say, with house money,
Right.
One loss early on, yeah. 2 losses, probably, if we look at how it's been the last few years, 2 pretty much will put you out of it. And, in the conference and in the division. I see the winner coming out of the divisions, maybe with 1 loss, maybe with 2, but 1 is probably the best bet.
1 is going to be your limit. If you got 2 losses, you're not more than likely are going to be in the driver's seat of the winner's circle for the division. I'm sorry. It's too much. Now, and this is no knock on the East. You could more than likely be in the driver's seat from the East with 2 losses, but not from the West.
Well, we saw that, a few years ago? Last year was up in the air, believe it or not. That big loss, Alcorn State at home to Alabama State. But you know what, though? When it came down, if we remember last year, when it came down to it, when Alcorn was under the gun, couldn't afford another loss, they start chopping heads off, left and right.
Yes, sir.
And they are the team to beat. Now, we discussed at length somewhat last week the predicted order finish, and that's fine. That musters up a lot of interest, but it's going to be won on the field. And some people have already just put it out there. Every other day I got a Alcorn fan that sent me a funny shirt, and I started to post it on my Facebook page. Who wants that smoke?
I wasn't gonna say it, but I knew it was gonna.
but they're confident, and they should be.
Yes, sir.
But some of those who sent me that, you know who they fear? And fear may be a strong word, but are concerned with, it's always Grambling State. Through 6-2 in the last 8 games. So back to my original statement, it's kind of like in the NBA. You wonder why certain teams match up well with certain teams, but then they may have not as much success against a quote-unquote lesser team.
Mm-hmm.
It is interesting.
Well, a lot of people say it's playing down to your competition, and it's just an automatic. It's a given. When you're playing a Grambling, Southern, Alcorn, if you need somebody to get up for that, then you shouldn't be out there playing. You shouldn't be out there if you need motivation to play anyone, but in particular, your big dogs of your conference. If you need extra motivation for that, you don't need to be dressing out. That's just my personal opinion. So when you play an Alcorn, you better bring your hard hat because you're going to have to put in some work. When you play Grambling, you're going to have to bring your hard hat. When you play Southern, you're going to have to bring your hard hat. For my beloved Panthers, I'm not sure if people are in that mode just yet. They know you could need your hard hat, but it's like a Jekyll and Hyde. I don't know which Prairie View team is going to show up. But for
Mm-hmm.
consistency, Alcorn, Grambling, and Southern, you're going to have to be physical. You're going to have a deep trench game, and you're going to have to be able to play 64 minutes.
And here's another perspective. Prairie View, the way they started out last year, we've talked about it before against Rice, North Carolina Central. Social media is funny. Everyone's entitled to their opinions, and after certain games, man, people were just like, "Hey, just go ahead and crown them." But I look at it in relation to a boxing match. Prairie View is the guy that can come out, has a good jab. They're throwing the jab. They're mixing it up. They look good doing it until they get hit in the mouth, or they get cut. Oh, the boxer's cut. How do you react to that? All of that to say this, and I was talking to some people this week. Alabama A&M, I throw them in the conversation. They're picked second in the East, correct?
Right.
Prairie View A&M picked second in the West. If there's a slip-up, then on paper, those two teams could win it.
Yes.
But we talked to Mo Carter last week, and he said what he was going to be looking at is the line of scrimmage, O-line, D-line. I put Prairie View in until I'm proven otherwise. That's where the challenge is for both of those teams. And it's like if I get them in a brawl, back to boxing, I can go to the body because they can't take a body punch.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's where they're going to prove. Now, every team has some challenges, perhaps except, the smoke team, Alcorn, because they've done it. They're very confident, and I guess they should be.
Well, they have every right to be. When you talk about last 4 out of 5 years, or is it 5 out of 6 years, being the top dog out of the East and making it to the championship game, you can't help but respect the smoke. But when you talked about boxing, Joe Frazier had a son named Marvin Frazier who was a little bit taller than his daddy. He was a little bit more chiseled, but he wasn't his daddy. And
no, he wasn't tough.
he could. You talk about that glass jaw. I could recall when his daddy just threw in the towel. He said, "I can't watch my son get destroyed like this." So when you talk about the Alabama A&M and the Prairie View situation, ironically, now I'm about to throw a little history in on you. This is the 10th anniversary of Prairie View winning the Southwestern Athletic Championship in 2009. And guess who they played to win the championship? Alabama A&M.
Alabama A&M.
Uh-huh. And
could there be a rematch? According to prognosticators.
Well, I'm saying that this could be the year that Prairie View makes it back to the championship. I'm on record for saying that. And I'm not necessarily saying it would be Alabama A&M, but how ironic would that be if those two were to meet in this 10th year anniversary of that game?
Well, Prairie View, correct me if I'm wrong, they will go to Alcorn State.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes. Southern
will go back to the place where the smoke was flying everywhere, fireworks after the game. And I'm going to tell you, my best friend, I know him very well. Since 1988, he was pissed. And you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I got you. But you know
do.
what?
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a card of a good therapist, man, that can help you get through that little smoke incident.
Well, I mean, it is what it is. That they celebrated. It was not a good feeling, but I guess if you can take something out of it, it's better to get there and lose than not get there at all.
Amen to that, brother. But my theory to that is, no one remembers the second place winner. My theory is the second place winner is the first loser.
Well, when I said Southern has been number 2 a lot of times. A lot of people say, "Oh, that's okay," from the outside looking in. But once you get into the championship mode, it is good to win it. But if you don't, that means you fell one game short.
Right. And that's a matter of expectations. You got some teams that literally just want to be competitive, and then you have other teams that expect to win championships. So if you're one of those that just look to be competitive, you're okay with finishing second or third. But if you're looking to win championships, it's, as you say, it's Atlanta or bust. And there's nothing wrong with those expectations. But if you're going to have those expectations, you need to make sure that you're making everything possible from an administrator's end to ensure that to happen. You can't go out there expecting championships if you're not investing back into your programs. You can't do that.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting because the predicted order finish now in the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference and the Southwestern Athletic Conference. And once again, that's just the predicted order of finish.
Right.
It's going to be played and won on that football field.
Yes, sir.
I just got a text message from a listener who says, hey, Grambling State, pick third. And, I told you during the live show, Swag Football Media Day, I had them pick second.
Oh, I know. I had them pick third, like I said.
And I also had the East. In the East, I had Jackson State second.
Right.
What do I know? I'm just a sports talk host. I'm no coach. I understand that. But, yeah, the listener says the G-men are quiet. Yeah. And
they've been doing some
nobody's really talking about it.
They've been doing some portal damage, too, brother. They've been doing some portal damage. Do you hear me?
Oh, Grambling State?
Yes, sir. When I say portal damage, they've been hitting that portal. They've been bringing some monsters on that front line in. See, here's what I
haven't heard that,
brother. Trust me. Here's how I value the portal. I don't get giggity when you get a skill position coming through the portal. I get giggity when you got some O linemen and D linemen that you're able to convince and be a part of your program for a couple of reasons. Even though they might be on that second tier on the FBS brand, but they could come in and be an immediate impact on the FCS brand. And when you get a guy who finally figures it out, you know what? I'm going home. I'm going to one of my HBCUs, and I'm going to represent here. You bring the work ethic, hopefully, to that program, and then you become an immediate impact. And when you go to that portal, I don't want a guy who's going to, A, cause me problems, and then B, be somebody I have to coach up. This should be a person you should be able to plug in, and you go on to the next position because that's taken care of now.
Well, Grambling State picked third.
And the only reason they're picked third is because
I know Grambling State fans are saying they're better than that.
Well, it's because of their suspect at the quarterback position. That's the only reason. If you really look at this, these projections, in my opinion, were based on the quarterback play. Who's picked to be the number one quarterback in the return to SWAC? Noah Johnson. Okay? There's a lot of expectations for Skelton. There's a lot of expectations for Glass. There's a lot of expectations for Morton. So when you look at it, according to the coach's projections, those are the top four quarterbacks returning to the conference. So everybody else, quarterback play was somewhat suspect. That's how I see they picked this.
Well, I don't think Higginbotham is chopped liver, though.
Didn't say that. Did not say that. Did not.
No,
say
but
that.
I'm just saying.
I'm just saying that to G Nation folk. They'd be like, Prince said. No, Prince didn't say that. What I said, based on performance from quarterback positions from last year, Higginbotham was not as consistent as those other four quarterbacks I just mentioned. Would you agree with that?
Among others in the conference.
Okay, I understand that, but we're talking about this order of finish. Even though Jackson State got the guy coming in out of Florida, he still has not
Hasn't done one thing
Done
yet.
thing in the conference. So you got to kind of like, okay, let's ease up on the brakes on this right here. Everybody else, quarterback play has been questionable. Has been
Well, I know,
questionable.
but I know out of 10 teams in conference, 8 are bringing back starters
Yes,
or
sir.
have playing experience. So once again, it's fun in the predictions. If Southern was predicted second in the West, would I be up in arms? No, that's just a prediction. It's
Right,
gonna be played
right.
on. It's gonna be played on that football field, and I think every school in the conference has strengths, and they have some things they have to work on.
Right.
Some more than others. You look at UAPB. What were they, third in the conference in offense, but they were 10th in defense.
Right. Right. And that's a huge contrast, man, because right now that's imbalance. Your consistent programs are going to always, I'm not going to say always, but most of the time be in the upper echelon. I say top 5 when I say upper echelon of the conference on both offense and defense. Very rarely do you have a solid championship caliber program where there's a contrast, as we just mentioned with Pine Bluff, third on offense, 7th in defense, or 10th in defense. That's huge contrast. So you want
Mm-hmm.
to get as much balance as you can. And for me, that balance comes from your line play on the offense and defensive side of the ball.
Well, based on that, then the 2 teams I mentioned, they're going to have to show me that's where they've made tremendous strides. Have they done that in 1 year? We shall see.
Right. Well, when I know August 3rd, when the camps open up at Prairie View, I'll be out there with pen and paper, uh, looking exclusively at the interior play. I appreciate the skill play positions, but as I've vindicated and vouched and beat my drum, it doesn't mean a thing if they don't have the protection up front. It doesn't mean a thing.
Yeah. Oh, well, a listener says, but you're saying Atlanta are butts. Well, that's what I'm hearing. As far as, and I guess he's referring to Southern University. Hey, why not have high expectations? Why not?
Well, it's once again.
Getting to the championship game and losing for the second year in a row. Now there was a coach who I'm still trying to get on who got there and lost more than he won, and he was let go. Was that fair?
No, it's not fair,
No.
and that's why Jackson State is still somewhat suffering because of the Comedy curse. But the bottom line is this: when you're saying Atlanta or bust, I mentioned a little while ago in this segment. When you have expectations and you know what you want, and I'm not saying that other institutions are not wanting to be champions, but there's an old saying, and I'm not saying this is proper, but it's just an example of what you know. If you're not cheating, you're not trying. So when you know, hey, we got to make this happen. We got to do this right now. There is no tomorrow. There's an urgency for right now. And once again, I put Southern, Grambling, Alcorn in those categories. Now, once upon a time, you would have Jackson State in that category, but when Jackson State, for whatever reason, got beside themselves with the Comedy era, they pulled the plug, and they have not been resuscitated since then. So when you well, I mean, it's just the truth, brother. So when you look at how the expectation bar is, I'll use Prairie View. Prairie View does want to win. I do know that. But Prairie View has taken the stands on there are only going to be 2% of our student athletes on average that make it to the professional ranks. We want these guys to be professional in whatever field they're studying. So we take the pride in being competitive, but winning in that classroom. And I'm not saying other institutions are not taking that approach, but the bar is going to be adjusted to a certain level. Yes, we expect to win, but we'd rather win excuse me, in that classroom setting. We'd rather have strong APR rankings. We'd rather have now when the APR rankings begin to sink and you're not winning, that's when the thing is compounded in the case of a Prairie View. That's just from my perception.
Mm-hmm. Well, I remember here locally one time, a guy said, academics is a must. We understand that. But there will never be 100,000 fans in the stadium looking at at a person taking a test academically. He says, I expect this sports team to win, and that's what I expect. Now, academics has its place.
Right.
And you expect academics to do well as well. But I just think fans, which are fanatics, alumni, they expect the best.
No doubt. I mean, look, I don't.
And
care
it'll be fun to come back and see how these predictions came about. Did they play out the way that it was predicted? You know, that's the fun part too. If somebody comes out of the West that wasn't picked first,
right. Well, my dark
people are
horse
going to be like,
it's Texas Southern. They're concerning the heck out of me of late, and the fan in me, I am glad that we're playing them so early in the season. I'm extremely glad, even though that win or loss can be detrimental, in my opinion, to whoever loses that game. But I would rather face them now because to me it's the perfect storm. You got a first-year coach, even though he's experienced, he's putting his pieces together, and he might have a couple of hiccups out the gate trying to figure this thing out. But as they continue to gel as a program, come October, November, when the rubber is truly meeting the road, I'm not sure if I want to see Texas Southern. I'm just saying.
Interesting.
Yes, sir.
Well, you know, I know people say I'm cocky and arrogant. I just don't see it, but maybe I'll see it in October. I'm just saying, you know, you have 1 year turnarounds, but I looked at it more as a process. 2 years from now, 3 years from now, then I look and see where that program is at.
Well,
with Alabama A&M, I'm going back to them. They're picked second. Everybody says they have everything in place. We shall see.
We shall see. And what I'm intrigued about with Texas Southern's case, they just had a kid who was a Houstonian, went to LSU, in fact, and he's returned back, Jonathan Giles. Now,
how many schools he's been all over the place? I know of him well.
That, but there's no place like home. You're back in front of the home crowd. You're back in front of your family, you know, and there's a little extra motivation just for that comment that you old Baton Rouge native just made. How many places has he been? And I'm not excited about that. But you got to admit the brother has talent. You've got to admit. Now, once again, going back to the statement that Dawson Odom made, I'm not one for dealing with guys, you know, talking about this as a second chance opportunity for HBCU students. I'm looking to build character on these men on and off the field. And if I got 2 or 3 more years I can deal with them, I'd rather deal with them. But in Jonathan Giles' case, he is coming back home to familiar territory. He's coming back to play for a coach who grew up in the same area that he is, and he's coming back. So these guys are returning with a chip on their shoulder. They've quietly and methodically have been hitting that portal with those offensive, defensive linemen, making an impact. And that's why I'm saying I'm glad that we're facing them coming out of the gate, because there can still be some terminology misunderstanding, just some cohesiveness as gelling as a group. But by the time October hits, man, they could be one force to be reckoned with.
Mm.
There's something to think about.
Yeah, well, I know if they win that first game, it'll be people calling for somebody's head. There will be people.
Yes,
There will be people doing that.
There will be people doing it, and well, let me ask you this: do you think deservedly so they should be doing
that? Not calling for heads,
right?
Or calling for the coach's head after the first game, albeit losing to a team that, as by your own admission, may be hell. They may be good in October. We shall see about that. But it's the first game, and it's a conference game. It would be a very bad loss to your arch rival.
Yes.
And I'll leave it at that because, hey, it's year 2. No honeymoon period. I would just consider it a bad loss.
Right. And see the difference.
That's just me.
The difference between this Tiger team versus the Panthers last year, they played late in the season, Thanksgiving weekend. Texas Southern coach Mike Haywood was a dead man walking. The team had literally just kind of laid it down, and there were 60 points that the Panthers scored on Texas Southern. All that was an impact. That Monday, Haywood was shown the exit door. Okay, the difference now, this was the last game that Texas Southern played, and you got embarrassed by your arch rival. Now you're opening up the season against your arch rival. Yes, the pressure is on Prairie View, and Prairie View has more to lose in that game, in my opinion, than Texas Southern. As you made reference to Charles saying, he can go in with house money, McKinney, and do whatever needs to be done. That's why I'm saying, hopefully, they're still trying to put pieces together, figure some things out, and Prairie View can get that win and move on down the road and don't have to worry about the likes of a Texas Southern until 2020.
Well, I'll be honest with you. Prairie View is going to be predicted to win. They should win. Will they win? That'll be determined by Prairie View and the coaching staff. And on that note, got to take a time out. Brandon B.J. Jones is coming up next. We're going to transition and look at the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, their predicted order finish, and can there be a sleeper team? Can there be a team that can dethrone North Carolina A&T? We'll talk all of that with Brandon B.J. Jones on HBCU Game Day. You're listening to the Carlos Brown Show on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com.
The birth of legends are storied in this conference. We must never forget our rich history. We now turn our gaze to the future. The new legends will emerge. New heroes to arise. The Southwestern Athletic Conference. Be our history.
One voice. It can get the point across, but it only carries so far. Add a voice. It's richer, louder, but that has limits too. Add a third voice. It's even more powerful. Add another, and many, many more. And we are stronger than ever. That's the power of a community coalition. They help community groups, faith groups, civic organizations, PTAs, employers, and many others in your community organize their resources and focus them where they're needed most, like fighting to keep kids away from drugs. Ask a group that you belong to if they should belong to a community coalition. It's easy to get involved. Visit helpyourcommunity.org and they'll tell you exactly how your group can help. That's helpyourcommunity.org, because you get more when we get together. Brought to you by the Office of National Drug Control Policy and the Ad Council.
Are you one of the many Americans that deal with the effects of diabetes? Diva Skin Conditioner could be the remedy that you need. Diva Skin Conditioner is a formulation that was designed with you in mind. Diva Skin Conditioner comes with a money-back guarantee. That's how confident they are in their product. For more information, visit divafeet.com. That's DIVAH feet.com. Or you can speak with a representative by dialing 903-270-0026.
Welcome back to this week's edition of the Carlos Brown Show on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com, boy. During the commercial break, there's always interesting conversations going on. Let me welcome back to the show Brandon B.J. Jones of HBCU Game Day. Brandon, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Carlos, man. How's it going this morning?
Well, I'm doing fine. If I can just control Michael Prince, unbelievable. Yeah. Yep. Well, yeah, I understand. Brandon, yesterday in Norfolk, Virginia, they decided on the predicted order finish, the All-Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference team. My first question to you, North Carolina A&T picked to win it. What are your overall thoughts of the predicted order finish in the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference?
It went about how I expected. We talk about North Carolina A&T and the talent that they have and the work that they've done in the offseason, acquiring new talent, building on the talent that's already there. I kind of felt like they were going to be the team to beat, And it's a safe bet if you look at history over the last 5 years. It's a safe bet. Bethune-Cookman right there in that 2 spot, pretty much expected that. Then you have them followed by FAMU and then North Carolina Central and Howard. It's pretty much what I expected. I did expect to see Norfolk so far down at the bottom. We expected Delaware State to be at the bottom, but it's pretty much what was expected. If you look at it as a whole.
Bethune-Cookman College, tell me about them. Do they have enough? Can they be the team that can dethrone North Carolina A&T?
Yes. They could. But Bethune-Cookman has to play. The thing with Bethune-Cookman is they'll play up 1 week, they'll play down 1 week. They'll play up 1 week, they'll play down 1 week. So you'll get the Bethune-Cookman team that, that beat FAMU. You'll get the Bethune-Cookman team that, gave North Carolina A&T fits. And then you'll get the Bethune-Cookman team that lost to Howard. It's like you never know what you're going to get with them. You'll get the Bethune-Cookman team that struggled to beat North Carolina Central. You never know. They have the talent. Marcus Ford, defensive lineman there, was named first team all defense in the mid over in the MEAC. He's talented. They bring back a talented quarterback. They have a talented secondary. Trevor Merritt and Tydarius Peters are 2 guys in that secondary that are first team all conference guys. They're talented. They could possibly play on Sunday. Marcus Hendricks is one of the best linebackers in the conference for Bethune-Cookman. So they have the talent. Return the quarterback, have one of the most electric running backs that you'll see in the country. It's just a matter of them just tying together and being able to do it week in and week out.
Visiting with Brandon B.J. Jones of HBCU Game Day. North Carolina A&T, of course, picked to win it. Brandon, North Carolina A&T will win it because
they will win it because they're focused. A lot of what I'm hearing out of the A&T camp last year, yesterday talking about last year, was that A&T got to a point after they had beaten Jacksonville State and they had beaten East Carolina, that a lot of guys in that locker room felt like, well, that's the season, fellas. You know, we can just roll the ball out there, and it doesn't matter who we face. They're going to see that helmet, and, you know, because in those games, North Carolina A&T did not play their best games in either one of those contests, and they were able to win it. And that created this attitude that we can just roll the ball out there and just get it done. And that's not the truth, man. They had some problems in the locker room a year ago. And even with that, they were still able to succeed. Now, with that loss to Morgan State, that unexpected loss to FAMU, now they see that we have to come in, we have to be prepared to play week in and week out, regardless of how much talent that we have, regardless of what we may achieve, we have to come in and play week in and week out, because no one's going to see that A&T helmet and just lay down.
Brandon, got an interesting question from a listener. Being in Virginia, why can't Norfolk be a powerhouse HBCU football program?
From what I'm hearing, a lot of Norfolk's problems were due to funding. You know, we oftentimes think that to have a successful football program, you just get a coach, he gets on the phone, he gets players, and there you go. But when you start talking about football at the Division I level, at any level, but particularly at the Division I level, you have to have the funding to be able to go along with your team. That's what's going to give you the funds to get the equipment that's necessary, the staff around them that's necessary. And quite frankly, Norfolk State has been handcuffed in recent years because of that. They've had some financial difficulties. Sounds like some boosters have really stepped up and things are getting better there. Now we can see what Coach Scott's going to do in year 3 up there in Norfolk. I think Norfolk, the talent is there. They can get out and recruit the talent there. I think if you can give Coach Latrell Scott correct the funding part, I think that he can take that Norfolk program to the level that they've been eager to go to for some time now.
This is Brandon B.J. Jones, HBCU Game Day, discussing the MEAC football predicted order of finish. FAMU, Coach Willie Simmons, they got a couple of first place votes, albeit they're not eligible for postseason. Some would say FAMU has a pretty good team coming back. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, FAMU has a lot of talent coming back. Ryan Stanley has the ability to lead Tallahassee as, you know, one of the best quarterbacks to ever play at Florida A&M. They have a nice 1-2 punch at the running back position with Deshaun Smith at one running back, and then Bishop Burnett at the other running back. Both of those were actually named to the all-conference second and third teams, 2 running backs. So 2 guys in the same backfield. They have weapons at receiver. Defensively, they played a lot better a year ago and have some talent there. FAMU is poised to have a pretty good year. It's just going to be interesting to see who's the real FAMU. Is it the FAMU that we saw the first half of the season, or that FAMU that we saw coming down the stretch where in 3 weeks you just had to win 1 game and they couldn't do it?
I was going to bring that up next. I mean, 3 opportunities. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. But FAMU, of course, Southern University goes into Rattler Stadium. Look, Bragg Stadium actually is what it's called. I've been there before as part of the radio crew and just being there. At that time, it was a very intimidating place. I don't know, the feel of it now, but Southern University will visit FAMU early on in the season. I guess we'll get a chance to see how good this FAMU football team is with that one. Brandon, you got Coach Alva, new head coach at North Carolina Central, and then, South Carolina State, Coach Pugh. I mean, the conversation often is about South Carolina State. It goes like this. Man, they play hard, outstanding defense. If they could ever muster up some consistent offense. Talk about North Carolina Central and South Carolina State.
I mean, with North Carolina Central, there's talent there. There's some talent there at North Carolina Central. So Trey Oliver's not walking to a situation where the cupboard's bare. Isaiah Totten, the kid that he has at running back, might be the best running back in the MEAC. Talented kid. He can make every run. He's first team all MEAC. I like him a lot. You have your quarterback, Chancey Caldwell, that's back, a big kid, 6'5", 6'4", 230 pounds. There's a lot of talent on the North Carolina Central team. And North Carolina Central isn't too far away from winning the MEAC. If it wasn't for a Hail Mary 2 years ago against Bethune-Cookman, they go into a winner-take-all again with North Carolina A&T. And at that point, leading up to that, they had beaten A&T 3 years in a row. We're only 2 years removed, from that season. So you got kids in that locker room that are accustomed to winning. That bodes well. And Coach Oliver, being from North Carolina Central, one of the first things he did was reach out to the old lettermen. Now you have those old Eagles from back in the day. They're back in the fold. A lot of them on that coaching staff. I like the direction that they're going. And then with South Carolina State, man, you know what South Carolina State it's going to be a dogfight.
Yeah.
All right, they're going to roll up their sleeves. They're going to punch you in the mouth defensively. Now the question with South Carolina State is, what's their identity offensively? Coach Pugh.
Good question.
Coach Pugh got into sometimes we listen to the fans a lot, and the fans will say, well, everyone's going to the spread and they're doing these things and it's going 40 and 50 points, and we don't want to win 13-6 anymore. We want to score 40 points, and the kids want. And I think sometimes you can buy into that. And we saw South Carolina State start off the season looking more spread oriented, and then coming down the stretch where they won 5 out of the last 7, kind of going back to their bread and butter. And you saw the emergence of the quarterback there, Tyrese Mick, who was a junior this year, was named third team all-conference. You saw the emergence of him come on late in the season. So I think a lot of people are excited about South Carolina State just because of how they finished 2018.
A lot to build on. Coach Pugh, do you see the end near if, let's say, it's a disastrous season? Albeit I know they finished strong, but, a respected coach, been there a while. Do you see him being there a few more years?
I almost look at it year by year. We kind of talked about Norfolk State and the financial strains that they have there. South Carolina State was in a situation just as bad. We were hearing rumblings of South Carolina State possibly going back to Division II. There was some enrollment was down, and all this stuff starts with the money. And now it looks like they've righted the ship a little bit. We just saw in the reported earlier this week that athletic director Stacey Danley, the amount of money that was raised for the athletic department, I mean, that's big. Now you're getting Buddy Pugh in the situation where now he's back comfortable. But now what happens if he doesn't win? Because they're accustomed to winning. If you look at Buddy Pugh, when he took over the job up into, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, they were competing for a MEAC title almost every year. It can be argued that in the 2000s, South Carolina State was the HBCU team of the decade. They, were going to the playoffs. They were an eyelash away from beating Appalachian State and Boone in the FCS playoffs. When you go that high and you come back down that low, it's always interesting to see how much patience your fan base will have. And I think that this fan base is really running out of patience. So it's going to be interesting to see how the season goes. I don't see him surviving another season up at Lynchburg. So.
It'll be interesting. And as you've been discussing, boy, I saw South Carolina State coming to SWAC MEAC Challenge. Oh, boy. Was that a tough game? Mm-hmm. You remember a couple of years ago? Oh, boy. I mean, the drop pass by the South Carolina State receiver.
Oh, man.
Wide open. You know what? I had to do a cross signal in the press box. I mean, the people were just, you could hear the gasp in the whole stadium. oh my, OMG, he's wide open.
Wide open.
And dropped it, and boy, that, and Leonard, the linebacker, oh, man, all of that. I mean, he really made his presence known, especially in that second half. But you're absolutely right about South Carolina State, man. I mean, you just know you're going to be in a physical altercation with South Carolina State. So, with that being said, you see North Carolina A&T winning the football championship again, but Bethune-Cookman really a very good shot at if North Carolina A&T doesn't, Bethune-Cookman could very well be the MEAC championship. You would agree with that?
No, I agree. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate it as always, BJ, to give us some insight on the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, the Southwestern Athletic Conference, HBCU football. It should be an exciting season coming up. Most teams getting ready to report within the next week or two, week and a half for fall camp. So it should be interesting. Any closing comments and how people can reach you on social media and read your content?
Oh, yeah, man. It's getting closer to the season, so I'll be a lot more active on social media, at Twitter, Inside HBCU Football, also just my personal page, Facebook, as well as the Inside Black College Football Facebook page. You'll see me a lot of being more active, especially with HBCU game day now that the season's rolling back around. Looking forward to it. Just looking forward to coming in and chatting with you guys, you and Mike. And like I said, always, man, I thank you guys for having me on and, just allowing me the opportunity, your blessings just to come on and kind of just talk ball with you guys. It's always one of the highlights of my week to come on and talk with you, Carlos.
Well, I appreciate that. And can I ask you something? Sure. Are you getting these pictures with Alcorn T-shirts and saying, who wants that smoke? I'm getting them every week, and I'm starting to get a little bit ticked off now.
Hold on, Carlos. Hold on. Are you saying that Alcorn Nation is stalking you?
It's a few of them. It's a few of them, but guess what? Great atmosphere there on October 26th. I think I've just decided once again, me and the entourage, we're going to make that trip 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 15 minutes if I get a police escort to the reservation. And, hey, it should be another entertaining football game. Brandon, appreciate it. And try to duck away from the Alcorn fans. Good.
Oh, man, I'm trying.
Yeah.
I'm trying.
I'm going to pull for Grambling State now, since Grambling State has their number, Alcorn State. But speaking of Grambling State, coming up next, Corey Diaz of the Monroe News Star, he's going to talk about Grambling State University. Not football. Not a lot of people are talking about them. Have everyone just buried Grambling State for dead, or they're not concerned with Grambling State? I happen to still feel that they're a threat. But maybe I'm just the only one. But Corey Diaz coming up next. You're listening to the Carlos Brown Show on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, in the next 7 years of bigger and bigger enrollments, America's grade schools will need nearly 250,000 extra teachers besides those to fill normal vacancies. This great need, plus the growing public interest in education and improvements in schools, make elementary school teaching a more rewarding career than ever, a career that high school and college students should certainly consider. Education holds America's future, perhaps your future.
Chris, can you put the video game controller down for a second?
I can talk and play. Oh, I'm totally annihilating this punk kid in Nebraska.
I just feel like you're not acting like a grown-up in our relationship.
Him too.
Well, you still ride your skateboard to work. There's the comic book collection, the race car bed.
Look, I'm young at heart, but I put money into my 401k every paycheck. I picked up a few savings tips at feedthepig.org. I have control over my financial life now, and that feels pretty grown up.
Put away a few bucks, feel like $1,000,000. Putting some money from every paycheck into a savings account or contributing to your 401k can make a big difference later. For free ideas and easy tips on ways to save, go to feedthepig.org. That's feedthepig.org.
So, I bet I look like a grown-up to you now.
Well, except for the footy pajamas, I'd have to agree.
This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
This is Al Wash with ALW Entertainment, the promoter of the State Fair Classic, and I want y'all to keep your dial because I listen to the Open Mic Network every day. Keep the dial locked in.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of this week's episode of the Coles Brown Show, heard exclusively right here on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com. First guest of hour number 2, Corey Diaz of the Monroe News Star, to talk some Grambling State football. Corey, good morning to you, sir.
Carlos, my man, long time no talk, man. How you been?
Well, I've been doing fine. Thanks for coming on. We appreciate the time. I got to ask, though, the last time we kind of exchanged text messages, very tough situation in Ruston, Louisiana, in that area. How is everything going up there right now?
Everything's going, surprisingly well. Obviously the EF3 tornado that came through and roughed up a lot of the neighborhoods in Ruston surrounding Louisiana Tech University, and obviously hit, a lot of those athletic facilities on campus as well. A lot of damage, but it was really awesome to see the community come together in the immediate aftermath of that storm, and it's really just the town of Ruston itself just feels like a much closer town. It just seems like everyone's really come together, and they really sort of rallied around each other, and it's been a beautiful sight. And of course, there's still a lot of cleanup to do. There's still so much work to be done. But I think everyone's come together in the aftermath of that, and it's just been a really good thing to see.
Yeah, I was reading some work between Grambling State and Louisiana Tech as far as helping out through the community. So we're going to continue to ask everyone to keep the area in their prayers and thoughts, because it's always kind of tough when those type of things happen, but you want to see the continued cooperation between everyone involved, and just appreciate everyone coming together during a tough time. With that being said, Corey, Grambling State predicted to finish third in the West. What's your overall thought about that as far as SWAC Football Media Day about a week ago?
Yeah, when I was standing in that ballroom there at the Weston in Birmingham for SWAC Media Day, and they were getting ready to unveil the all SWAC preseason teams and what the rankings were, the preseason poll was for the standings, and when I saw Grambling was picked third in the West, I honestly was a bit surprised. It's the lowest that they've been in a preseason poll since, I believe, 2014. So you're looking at, roughly 5, almost 6 years. And obviously the first time in the Fobs era too. And so, while there is a lot of question marks, and obviously with the way, last season, transpired for Grambling, with a lot of inconsistency and whatnot, I really thought they, that last month and a half of the year, I think they sort of came together as a football team, and they were playing their best ball at the end. They just kind of ran into a juggernaut in Southern there in the Bayou Classic, down in New Orleans. But, I really thought they were playing really well. And while they lost earlier in the year to Prairie View, I didn't And the way Prairie View ended the year last year, I thought for sure, Southern was obviously going to be the favorite to win the division again. With who they've got coming back, there was no question that Southern was going to be the predicted favorite to win the West. But, I thought with the way Grambling ended the year versus the way Prairie View ended the year last year, I honestly thought Grambling was going to be the second pick and then Prairie View was going to be third. So, but, at the same time, Eric Dooley does have a lot of guys. He has a lot of pieces coming back from last year's team that really done a lot of really good things. So I'm surprised, but I'm not surprised. But at the same time, talking with the players and talking with Coach Fobbs at SWAC Media Day, about being picked third, I think this team is really going to embrace that underdog role. And that's a role that that Grambling State really hasn't been in a while. So it's going to be kind of new territory for them. But I really think, the players are going to embrace that, the word I heard a lot was, sort of disrespect. I think the coaching staff and the players feel like a lot of the other coaches and players around the league don't really have a lot of respect for Grambling right now. So I think that's going to be a rallying cry for them this year. And I'm interested to see how they how that affects their play each and every Saturday in the fall.
That's interesting. Disrespect. I use another D word, dangerous. As far as I thought Grambling State would be picked second coming out of the West. So I guess I didn't know what I was thinking.
Me neither.
but it's fun, but it's going to be ultimately won on the field. So I think there is motivation going forward for Grambling State University. Corey, let me ask you this. Storylines going into fall camp for Grambling State University, and then we'll kind of get into the staff and the schedule.
Yeah, sure. I think what a lot of people around the Grambling State football program really want to see right now is, just how much more in sync and in tune, the new offensive scheme, with new offense coordinator Mark Orlando, how much have they progressed from spring ball, getting into fall camp, throughout the off season workouts and conditioning and whatnot, and getting into fall camp, you're just weeks away from kickoff. So I think a lot of people really want to see, how sharp the offense is at this point. The conversations that I've had with Mark since he's been hired, he really loves the quarterback room. He loves the guys that he has in there. Jeremy Hickbottom's going to be that guy. He's going to be starting quarterback. And one thing that Fobb said about Jeremy at SWAC Media Day is that he's put on some weight. He's gotten quicker. He's gotten stronger. His arm strength's gotten a little stronger, which were bits and pieces of his game that I really felt like after last year, his first full year starting, that he really needed to work on. He needed to work on his arm strength, and he needed to work on getting a little bigger. And he was able to do that this off season. So the quarterback's going to factor into Mark Orlando's offense a lot. And so with Jeremy going out and handling his business over the off season, I think it's going to bode well for him. Another thing that's really going to happen offensively is Grambling has got to find a consistent run game. Kevin Dominique, who transferred in from Ball State last year, everybody kind of thought that, he was going to be that guy. And, he struggled with a little bit of injuries early on and couldn't really get his feet under him. But he ran the ball really well in the spring, looked really good. And another redshirt freshman, Keelan Elder, legacy there. His dad played with Fobbs at Grambling under Coach Rob. And, this kid really wowed me in the spring. I thought he was a little bit better than Kevin. He's smaller, a little bigger. He's more one of those bruising bowling ball type kids. He's going to seek out the contact. He's very physical, but deceptively quick too. So, if Grambling can find that consistent run game to help out Jeremy, just to create that balance offensively, I think we'll be. Still don't think we'll quite be to the years where we had Devontae Kincaid and Martez Carter, sharing the same backfield. I don't know if we'll have that type of production, but it can get close. And then obviously on the defensive side of the ball, massive hole in the middle there with the departure of Darius Christmas, a two-time, SWAC Defensive Player of the Year, phenomenal kid, great leader, really just been the quarterback of the defense the last 2 years. And so massive holes to fill there. Depending on what the coaches decide to do on that side of the ball with DeAndre Hogues, who started the last couple of years too. So he's got a ton of experience, but he can play inside or outside. He's played alongside Darius the last couple of years. He could start there. DeAndre McCarty's another kid that, defense coordinator Everett Todd has liked a lot. He could come in and fill that role too. But he just doesn't have quite the amount of experience that some of the other guys have. And so that's really that spot there in the middle of the defense, along with, really replacing 3 of your 4 defensive linemen. It's going to be a big thing that I think Coach Todd is going to focus on during fall camp. Got to find those 4 guys that can come in and give you that type of production that you need up front. So those are really, in my eyes, the biggest 4 storylines for Grambling heading into fall camp next week would be those.
Visiting with Corey Diaz of the Monroe News Star, talking Grambling State football, upcoming fall camp in 2019 football season. Now, Grambling State, you kind of mentioned about Mark Orlando, know him well, his years at Southern University, but they also just recently added on to their staff. Can you talk about Coach Orlando? And I believe they hired a running back coach, correct?
They did. They've hired this offseason. Fobbs has had to hire a tight ends coach, a running backs coach, and a cornerbacks coach.
Wow!
And the first of those that he hired was a guy by the name of Andre Fuller. He played at Louisiana Lafayette. Or I'm sorry, no, he didn't play at Louisiana Lafayette. He played at McNeese. And what's kind of funny about their relationship is that when Fobbs was at McNeese with Coach Viator, Andre was one of those kids that he recruited heavily and wanted to come play at McNeese. And right before Andre's senior year of high school football, Fobbs left and took the job at Grambling. And instead of continuing to recruit Andre to come play for him, Fobbs told him, "Look, you've kind of been committed to McNeese, and I want you to go there, and I want you to flourish." And so he finished up his playing career down at McNeese, and I think it was not even 3 months later, him and Fobbs were on the phone with each other, and Fobbs was in the market for a cornerbacks coach, and Andre played safety for McNeese and was an all-conference guy, and so. One thing led to another, and he hires Andre to come coach his cornerbacks, and Andre's a Monroe, Louisiana kid, so it was kind of like coming home for him, and so that was a pretty neat little story there. And then they hired Travis McCalcus to take over the tight ends. He's a guy that actually spent part of last football season in the spring as a GA. He was kind of on staff, so it was kind of a seamless transition for him to take over for Daryl Kitchen there in that spot. He was working with the wide receivers during the spring, and so he's very much in tune with what Mark Orlando's got going on with the offense and what he's looking for. And I know all the kids and players that I've talked to since McAllister got hired, they're very excited about him coming on board in a full-time capacity. And then the latest, last week officially, which this has kind of been, I knew Dre Facilier was going to be hired as the running back coach for about a month and a half now, and they were just, waiting for things to officially happen. So officially last week, Dre was hired to take over the running back spot, taking over for, Roderick Fobbs' dad, Lee Fobbs, who retired after last year. And, big shoes to fill, Lee's kind of a legend in his own right. He coached Dre because Dre 2 years ago was a running back at Grambling. So, it was easy for him to take this job. I think it was an easy hire for Fobbs to make. Dre spent last year under Lee, as a GA, helping him with the running backs. And when I spoke with Dre last week, he said, last year Coach Lee kind of gave me a little bit of freedom in terms of coaching the guys and getting them ready to go. And so he had kind of already, kind of got his feet wet a little bit coaching that position. And obviously he played it while he was at Grambling. So he knows what that expectation is of the running game at Grambling State University. And he's fired up to take over that spot. And I know the kids, a lot of those kids know him. They've known him for a long time. So, it's kind of like one of those no-brainer hires where, okay, I can hire this guy. I know him. He played for me. Our current players know this guy well enough. They will play hard for him. So I think it was a no-brainer hire, and I think it'll end up being a good one too.
Well, Grambling State completes their staff, and Coach Fobbs really now expects everyone to get to work. And speaking of work, I'm looking at Grambling State's schedule. At Louisiana Monroe, August 31st. At Louisiana Tech. You're going to hear quite a few ats. At Alabama State, September 1st. Then versus Prairie View A&M, but that's in Dallas State Fair. And then at Jackson State. My goodness. Most of the coaches that we talked to during the live radio show at SWAC Football Media Day basically said that they would kind of know where their team stands after September. How does Grambling State? I mean, they're playing up the first 2 weeks, but a very tough opening few weeks. Wouldn't you think?
Yeah, I think it's it's been one of the tougher opening stretches for them that they've had in the last few years. Obviously, in those games against Louisiana Monroe and against Louisiana Tech, those are opportunities for evaluation. They're gonna play a lot of guys at a lot of different positions. Those two games are obviously okay. Let's see what we got. We kind of know who our starting 11 is going to be, but let's see who's on the 2 deep. Yeah. But you're right though. I mean, not having a home game there in the first 4 or 5 weeks of the year, and having to go to Montgomery to play Alabama State, and then you got to go to Dallas to play Prairie View A&M, a game that Grambling's chomping at the bit to play. They feel like they let one get away last year at the Cotton Bowl, and then you got to go to Jackson, who I think Jackson State, they could be a sleeper in the East. With the a quarterback transfer coming in from Florida. I mean, a new coach. I think there's a lot of buzz happening in Jackson right now around the Tigers, and that could be one of those games where it could really send Grambling State's season one way or the other. Grambling could travel over to Jackson State, play them, win that game, and that could really give them that push for the remainder of the year. Or, they get on the bus, they ride over there, and they say they lose that game. That could be a very deflating loss for them. So those first 5 weeks, it's kind of like you mentioned, a lot of coaches that you talk to the SWAC Media Day, we're kind of going to know where we're at after the first 3, 4, 5 weeks. And I don't think Grambling's any exception to that. I think especially after that Jackson State game, I think Coach Fobbs and his staff and his players will really know where they stand, what they're going to need to work on, and what's left to be done for them in the second half of that year to try to get themselves, back in a spot where, they set the Bayou Classic up for another, basically a playoff game. Win and you get into the SWAC championship game. You lose, you go home. So, those first 5 weeks are going to be very pivotal for them. It's going to be important. It's going to be important for the whole team to be playing well early, as early as possible. Figure out what that 2 deep is before you get to that Alabama State game, and then from then on, you can go in and you can start these conference games and really know where you stand, and obviously you're going to try to win those games. So it's going to be a tough opening stretch. And I'm interested to see, especially after those 2 local games at the beginning of the year, kind of what the morale of the team is, and how they plan to attack SWAC play.
Well, put on your traveling shoes, albeit it's just up the road the first two games, but Montgomery and Dallas at Jackson. Then you come home, Alabama A&M, which everyone is saying that they could be also a team to watch out of the East. Then you have Texas Southern homecoming in, Alcorn State at home. So a very challenging schedule, but one I'm sure Coach Fobbs and the players are looking forward to that challenge. Corey, appreciate the time as usual. Throughout the football season, we will invite you back to talk Grambling State football.
Sounds great, my man. Like I said, I appreciate you having me. Next time let's don't wait so long to get up and talk.
Well, I would agree on that, and I say very shortly you'll be getting a text message from me saying I need you to come on, because during the football season, I try to highlight some of the top games and get a report from the guys who cover that particular institution, and I find that it's a good thing to do during the football season. So appreciate it.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Anytime you need me, just holler at me.
All right, will do. Thanks a lot, Corey. Corey Diaz from the Monroe News Star, talking Grambling State. Boy, looking at that schedule, they are on the road a lot. But historically, Grambling State has always traveled and been on the road. But, wow, that is a interesting stretch. But I still had them number 2 coming out of the West. But if I'm wrong, I will be proven wrong, I guess. Going to take a time out. When I come back, we'll visit with Charles Edmond of the Alcorn State Radio Network. He has a lot of interesting takes on SWAC Football Media Day that happened a little while ago. Didn't have a chance to talk with him last week, but he'll be here this week. And I'm sure he has some interesting tidbits on the conference and SWAC Football Media Day. Charles Edmond coming up next. You're listening to the Carlos Brown Show on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com.
Drivers and bicyclists both have the right to be on the road and travel safely. And when we're on the road together, safety is a shared responsibility. State law requires drivers to maintain at least 3 feet of clearance when passing bicyclists. And bicyclists should always ride with the direction of traffic and follow all traffic signals. It's safer. It's courteous. It's the law. A message from the Regional Planning Commission Pedestrian and Bicycle Program.
Do you know what's up with Ryan? He's been acting weird and he's not hanging out anymore.
He borrowed money from me and still hasn't paid it back.
His girlfriend broke up with him a couple weeks ago. Said he was more into his sports app than her.
He may be addicted to fantasy sports. We need to get him some help.
Sports betting and fantasy sports can have serious consequences. Know somebody with a gambling problem? Get free and confidential help. Call 1-877-MY-LIMIT. That's 1-877-695-4648. Or go online to opgr.org.
Are you one of the many Americans that deal with the effects of diabetes? Diva Skin Conditioner could be the remedy that you need. Diva Skin Conditioner is a formulation that was designed with you in mind. Diva Skin Conditioner comes with a money-back guarantee. That's how confident they are in their product. For more information, visit divafeet.com. That's D-I-V-A-H, feet.com. Or you can speak with a representative by dialing 903-270-0026.
The birth of legends are storied in this conference. We must never forget our rich history. We now turn our gaze to the future. The new legends will emerge. New heroes to arise. The Southwestern Athletic Conference. Be our history.
Welcome back to the final segment of this week's edition of the Carlos Brown Show, heard exclusively right here on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com. I guess I'm going to put this Grambling State prospectus down. I had it turned to the back where they have the schedule. Boy, I may have to put them on the list of tough schedules because they're on the road so much, and the first 2 weeks they're playing up. But Alabama State, Prairie View, so I guess everybody, Alcorn, they have a first tough couple of opening weeks. But to get a different perspective than ours, it's Charles Edmond of the Alcorn State Radio Network. Didn't have a chance to visit with him last week, but I have him here today. Charles, good morning to you.
Good morning. Good morning.
Well, yeah, good morning to you as well. You, at the end of, and you were on Radio Row at SWAC Football Media Day, so I guess you didn't get a chance to see the predicted order finish. But with that being said, let's get your first initial thoughts on predicted order finish, and then we'll get into some other particulars about SWAC Football Media Day.
Well, the only surprise to me is on the eastern side, I'm not a voter, but I would have had Jackson State picked to finish second simply because they played for the Eastern Division last year. You look at that body of work, they made a change as head coach. Tony Hughes out, Coach Hendricks in. They win a couple of big games, put themselves in position to win the East, albeit they didn't win the game that they needed to get to the SWAC championship game. But you look at what they have coming back. They have this kid Jones, who's a Florida transfer. From my understanding, is really taking control of that quarterback room and is really showing some leadership skills from what I've been told from folks at Jackson State. And even though Coach Hendricks said it's an open competition, I do think he'll be the quarterback at Jackson State before it's all said and done. So you look at that, and you look at what they've done. The defense has been pretty stout. Why would you have them pick third? I know Alabama A&M's a team up and coming, first-year head coach. And I just didn't see enough there that would lead me to believe that going into this season they would overtake Jackson State. That's just my opinion. Just this one voice, one opinion. And I know a lot of Jackson State folks that I know pretty much scratching their heads and thinking the same thing. So other than that, I think the order of prediction of finish, I think it's pretty much right. I would have Texas Southern fifth, UAPB fourth, simply because you got a second-year head coach in Cedric Thomas. And I did talk with TSU's coach at Media Day, and he looked like a deer in headlights, kind of nervous a little bit, and you can kind of understand. There's a lot of cleanup to do there to get that program where it needs to be. So that's why I would have UAPB fourth and Texas Southern fifth, but our voters kind of thought the other way. But other than that, I think everybody kind of understands, what teams are at the top, what teams are kind of mid-tier, and which teams are kind of digging themselves out of the bottom.
The number one team from the East and the West, of course, I think that's pretty much how everybody thought that would be. Would you agree?
Yeah, there's no question. You got Skelton coming back. You got Noah Johnson coming back. Southern University has proven themselves, at least right now, that they are kind of the top dog in the West. I talked with Coach Files, of course, at Media Day, and he did admit that Hickbotham probably will be their starting quarterback going into the season. They got a couple of tough games to start the season, as you talked about. And as a Gramblinite myself, as a student back in the 80s and 90s, it would have been a dream to see Grambling play La Tech because it was talked about back in the day, and now you got La Tech and ULM back-to-back weeks. If you're an old-time Gramblinite like me, that's something that you dreamed of when you were a student back in the day when they didn't play each other, but now it's kind of a regular occurrence. They got a tough start, but Hickbotham is their quarterback, and I believe that's probably the right call. It's his first full year getting the keys to the car there. But Southern, what Southern did with Skelton is absolutely terrific. He's that dual threat. You hope that he's improved over the summer, quarterback camps and all that stuff. You hope he's very much improved. as there's no question who's going to be the quarterback for the Jaguar Nation.
Well, Charles, and Corey just brought it up by using those games playing up to find out who is going to be the number 2 at every position. And I think coming into fall camp, I think most coaches, I'll just say this, they want competition as always, but I think they know who their starters are, basically, the players coming back. They want to see that who can step up and be a solid number 2, and if need be, who could step up to that number 1 unit if something drastic happened. So do you think that's kind of how everyone coaching, that's how most coaches believe about that, seeing who will be the backups at all the positions?
Well, I'm kind of surprised, to be honest with you, that if you talk to the coaches at Media Day and you ask them who their starting quarterback's going to be, just about every one of them, with the exception of maybe Dawson Odoms and Fred McNair, said it's an open competition. And it's kind of, you hear that every year. That's kind of coach speak. It's an open competition. But I guarantee you, the head coach probably knows who's probably going to be the starter come opening day. But they don't want to reveal that right now because they want there to be competition. Because if you said Carlos Brown's going to be the starter come opening day, and you got 2 other quarterbacks that you're kind of on the fence on, then you're kind of, for the backups, you're saying, well, you've already anointed your starter, but you want to have an open competition because something might happen, and quite frankly, the guy that you think might be the starter might have a chip on his shoulder, and he might think he's the guy and then not be as focused, and all of a sudden he loses that job. So I get it. I would like to get who the starters are going to be, but only a couple of coaches really going to tell you that, and at least told me that. Fred McNair, we know it's Noah Johnson, and we know who Southern's starting quarterback's going to be. But the other 7 coaches I talked to, they said the same thing. It's going to be an open competition, and best man win. And I get that. I get that because you do want there to be a battle each and every day of practice. Camp starting the next week to 10 days.
Yeah.
So you do want to see that competition. I would just like to hope that a coach would say, hey, Carlos Brown's my guy, and unless somebody unseats him, unless he gets hurt, we're gonna roll with Carlos Brown. Or whoever the starter's gonna be. That's just my opinion, but I'm not a coach, and that's why I'm on this side of the fence.
Yeah, I've had conversations in the past, particularly with my best friend. He would always say, "Look, I'm naming a guy, and I'm riding with,
right.
And now it's up to him to keep it." So I kind of can understand that. Got a couple of one question and one comment, and we'll get you to talk about both. A listener says, I don't know why, but I think JSU will be serious this year. So I expect Alcorn, JSU, and Alabama A&M to be a dogfight. Not to say I'm picking the Bulldogs to win it. And let's see. The question is for you is ask Charles what he thinks is Alcorn State's weakness. That's a good question. Because apparently y'all don't have any. And I say y'all don't have any weaknesses. All you have is talent, a juggernaut, and what? That's smoke. Unbelievable. Charles, anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I would say if there's one concern, we've got there's one of the top defensive players that was in these national publications during the spring, Terry Winnington, and he's not coming back. Coach McNair confirmed that on the show before last that we did about a month ago, because there were questions whether or not he would come back. He did indicate that Terry Winnington will not be back, and I think that's a huge loss defensively in the secondary. You say next man up, but when you have a big loss like that, then you have to kind of juggle the pieces a little bit. You hear the term plug and play, it's just next man up. But when you have quality talent, when you have a quality player that you've lost, then it gets a little interesting. So I think if there's one weakness, if there's one area of concern, it would probably be in the secondary. I think up front, you talk about the trenches. I think we're strong there, even though we lost our offensive coordinator / line coach Ryan Stanchek. I think we had a lot of pieces already there. Defensive line was already there, and secondary to me was kind of the concern if everyone didn't come back and Terry Winnington did not. So I think if there's one area, I think it would be that. I think we're solid at quarterback, although, and this is something that we'll be talking about, this is Noah Johnson's last ride. And if Noah Johnson stays upright and healthy, we're going to be having a conversation 12 months from now that Dawson Odoms had 12 months ago and Broderick Fobbs had 12 months ago. Like, it's going to be an open competition for who's going to be our quarterback, whether it's going to be Felix Harper, there's a kid from Meridian that a lot of people are high on. So I think, going forward, it'll be the quarterback position. But right now, I would say the secondary, because Terry Winnington was a huge, huge piece of that Braves back end, and we don't have him. So now, you're going to have to juggle a little bit to try to figure out, who's going to step up and take on that role.
Interesting. So Alcorn State does have a weakness, and I said a weakness. You didn't mention, but did you mention just one, Charles?
If you look at the quarterback position, we're solid there. In the backfield, we've got a stable of backs. We got a ton of receivers. Rodarius Anderson is 6'6", who was banged up last year. Offensive line is solid. Defensively, you got Solomon Muhammad, preseason defensive player of the year. Up front is solid, and the middle is solid. The back end, though, you're missing a key piece there. So, as teams try to stretch the defense on us and try to spread us out and try to get us on the back end, you have one of your key pieces not there. So, we'll see, if someone can step up in camp to make up for that. Terry Winnington was a terrific player, and a lot of people were talking about him at the next level. But, he chose not to come back, so now you've got to find someone to step in to fill those shoes.
Visiting with Charles Edmond of the Alcorn State Radio Network. We've had quite a bit of conversation on the number 2s, 2E and 2W. Prairie View, by the prognosticators, picked second in the West, and Alabama A&M. Now, with that being said, I have said both teams in the trenches is where I have to see the most improvement. What have you been hearing about Prairie View A&M and Alabama A&M? Or your thoughts on them being picked number 2?
I'm not quite. I know Dr. Prince might disagree, but
he might jump you, but that's okay.
Prairie View started out like a ball of fire last year, and they were the talk of not only the SWAC world but the FCS world. They were averaging 1 million points a game in the first month, and some people anointed them as Western Division champs. They beat Grambling, but then it was all downhill from there. I'm not quite there yet on Prairie View. If you talk to Coach Dooley, he really, and I talked to him at Media Day, he really wasn't surprised at how it all went down. Even in the first month of the season when he was, the talk of the conference, he felt like, we're okay for right now, but unless we clean some stuff up going forward, it's going to come back and bite us in the you-know-what, and that's what happened. Offensively, they got stale. Up front, they got stale. Defensively, they just never could get off the field. So I'm more sold on Grambling's defense is second in the West more so than Prairie View. I don't think Prairie View has proven to be, a top 2 team in the West. And for Alabama A&M, it's still a question mark for me too. They beat Bama State in the Magic City, and A&M folks have told me in Huntsville, hey, in 2 years, Alabama A&M is going to be the talk of the conference like Alcorn. Well, we'll have to wait and see on that one. But I'm just being honest. You have to. I respect every team in the conference, but the eyeball test doesn't lie to you. And granted, A&M, I think they have a very good coach. Byron Hicks, the AD, hired a veteran coach that's been through the grind. But the grind of the East, it's Alcorn, and right now it's Jackson State's getting in the conversation, but I see what A&M folks are saying. Yeah, they beat Bama State, they won the Magic City, so now they're flying high. But I'm not ready to put them over that hump quite yet. So I'm not quite sold on Alabama A&M. And for Prairie View, there's still some work to go. They got to clean up that defense. I mean, they scored a ton of points, but their defense couldn't get off the field. I mean, and that started with that Southern game. I mean, they wiped Prairie View out, and then Alcorn.
Wait a minute, Charles. You mentioned that Prairie View Southern loss.
That's 47.
Ahead,
that's 47.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and I think Coach Dewey said it at media day. Like, he knew that his defense had issues. Yes, they won some games, but he's been around the block long enough to know you cannot continue to win shootouts. At some point, you got to get off the field, and the defense couldn't get off the field. And offensively, I think teams kind of figured out their scheme at quarterback. They've got 4 quarterbacks, according to Coach Dewey. They got 4 quarterbacks that can get it done. He said, "quote, I've got one in my back pocket that nobody knows about." So we'll see how that all
silent assassin.
Yeah, silent assassin. Correct. So I'm not. I think Prairie View's on the cusp, but I think they're one injury away from being near the bottom of the conference. But I think, yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, if things go south in a hurry, especially early on, Prairie View could be in that bottom crust. But if they can stay consistent and if their defense is improved, and offensively they continue to do what they did last year, I do see them pushing, Southern and Grambling for the West.
Well, a lot of conversation over the last few years. The West is the best. The East is the least. It's Alcorn State in the East and everybody else. The West is much tougher. You think it plays out like that again this year, or will the East have a little bit more competition? You just mentioned Alabama A&M, and let's take the side of their fans. They pretty much said they had Southern dead in the water, and then Southern just catches fire defensively, believe it or not, and they come back and win that game. What was the score against Alcorn State last year, Alabama A&M? It was about a 9-point victory for Alcorn.
Yeah. I mean,
but and all that to say this, but I like what Maynard said. He said, our goal is always, I'm paraphrasing, is to play for a championship, but we must beat, and he mentioned Alcorn, Grambling, and Southern. Sorry, Dr. Prince, he didn't mention Prairie View. But the heavyweights.
Right.
And so he knows he's got to get through that. So I've never seen the number 2s that have been picked in both of those cases. Maybe people saying that they're just not the strongest number 2, or are they strong, or are we just way off base on that?
I'm gonna stick with what I believe and what I've seen. I mean, my eyeballs, my 6 eyes. I don't have 2 eyes. I don't have 4. I have 6. So my vision is pretty poor. What I saw with Jackson State and what they did tells me that Jackson State could be something to reckon with in the East. I think that, and really, if you go back the last 10 years, Jackson State has had 2 major problems: poor quarterback play and no running game. They had a kid in Ivy that everyone talked about. He got hurt in his first game against Tulane and was never the same quarterback. Their running attack has been, and because you have a quarterback that can't get it done, you just stack the box and you stop the running attack. Then you can't spread the field like you want to. So those have been 2 big areas that Jackson State has had trouble in. It looks like they've got 3 quarterbacks, a big Florida transfer that everyone's talking about. If he's the guy, which I think he will be before it's all said and done, and if they get the right system to fit what he does, and if they get some semblance of a running game, I think Jackson State will be more productive offensively. defensively, they did lose some pieces, and Coach Hendricks did allude to that, but he feels like they're still strong enough to be able to hold their own defensively. So I think the East, I mean, it's been Alcorn heads and shoulders above everyone else in the East, but I'm kind of a realist in the sense of I'm enjoying this run, but you do know that other teams are getting better as well, and I'm always keeping an eye on what other teams are doing, because Jackson State, I see the improvement. Alabama A&M, you can kind of see a semblance of improvement. Alabama State still has some work to do. And, of course, Mississippi Valley, they're still trying to figure things out. Even though I think Coach Dancy, a young coach, I think he got the right temperament and attitude. And they haven't had a healthy quarterback. So I see we are head and shoulders above the rest. We won 5 division titles with 3 different quarterbacks that have been anointed. 2 of those quarterbacks have been anointed before they really were. Remember, Lenoir Footman came in for an injured John Gibbs. He was going to be the next guy, but he was thrown in the fire early. He won. Noah Johnson was thrown in the fire earlier than when he was supposed to be because Lenoir Footman got hurt. So they were kind of broken in before they really were supposed to, and it worked out. Now, if Noah Johnson stays healthy, and our strength and conditioning coach said he's the strongest guy on the team, pound for pound. If he stays healthy and durable, then next year we gotta find a guy with very little experience, and we've seen how that has worked out already this past season with 2 teams with very young quarterbacks. So I think right now the Braves are head and shoulders above the rest in the East, but you have to understand other teams are getting better. At what speed and what pace, we don't know. But if I were to say there's one team that's getting better at a quicker pace than everybody expects, I think it's Jackson State.
Yeah. Actually, I got an email last week after the show. They felt the same way. Jack State was a sleeper. I've said that as much as it pains me. I said that as well. And the funny thing about Jackson State, John Hendrick, I was impressed.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm impressed easily, but he talked about the defense, of course, still being solid. Said they played about 26 players on defense, some out of necessity, but offensively, and I think Brother Prince asked him a question. He said, "Look, some people forget that I've coached on that side offensively." Wasn't that correct, Prince?
That was absolutely correct, sir. He said he was offensive line coach for Alabama State. He mentioned a couple other schools, and so he said he's not a novice on that side of the ball.
But, correct, and LSU was another place he had coached at, I'm sorry. But, Charles, you know what else he said? He said on offense, he likes to get first downs. And so with that being said, I think he kind of lets it. And by the way, I've read where he's named Ponder the starter, but as one of my friends says, what else is he going to say? You got to keep quarterbacks there. If you name Jones the starter right off the bat, you may have some quarterbacks unhappy and they leave. We'll see how that plays out. But to me, and I could be wrong, I think he wants to offensively run the football, get first downs, time of possession, and rely on his defense to be the number one part of the team. That's kind of what I gather from him. And he had an interesting conversation about RPOs. You remember that one, Dr. Prince? That he talked about.
we talked about, I was talking about, I said, well, the RPO and the spread is nothing but the wishbone from a pistol formation, and he took it and ran from there, and he said that's exactly what it is, and how you countered it is discipline on the defense.
Well,
I
hope someone's listening because, here we go again. Some teams scheme much better against Alcorn than other teams have. And I'll just leave it at that. Charles, I think you were going to say something.
Yeah, I think for Jackson State, Coach Hendricks being a defensive guy and there's the structure, and that's what Ashley Robinson, the AD, told me in terms of making the change. and promoting him as interim head coach, and then he's obviously the permanent coach. The fact that his defense was pretty strong despite the offensive woes. I think for JSU, they want to create turnovers. They want to make it a short field until their offense figures it out. I mean, they have the pieces to do it, but it's just a matter now of finding who's the quarterback, who's the guy. And I think, once they do that, then they figure with a shorter field, they figure they could be able to ground and pound and be able to, crowd the box and throw it over the top. We saw that in the game against Alcorn. But I'll tell you a sleeper team, Carlos. I think UAPB, and I talked with Cedric Thomas, who worked at Alcorn. That program has his stamp on it. He's a very intense coach. And I think UAPB might be more competitive than people might want to believe. Just talking to Coach Thomas, and I knew him when he was here at Alcorn, worked his way up from grad assistant, secondary coach, defensive coordinator. It's not a lot of laughing and joking going on in that UAPB facility because of what happened last year. He wants it to be all about business. And I know it's all about talent. It's all about the Jimmies and Joes. I think UAPB is going to be a lot more competitive, and I don't think teams are going to be able to push them around like they did last year, especially in the West.
I know when we interviewed him, it was obvious that they were third in total offense, but they were dead last in defense. And, of course, he had to acknowledge that. That's where their main reconstruction has to be, defensively. I still think it'll be a few years, but I don't want to win games if I'm scoring 45 points and I'm giving them 47.
Right.
That's just bad on your heart. You know what I'm saying? So,
and it's not realistic. It's not reality either.
No, and then, shootouts. So, to me, defense still wins championships, balance on offense, and special teams. We don't talk a lot about that, but, boy, they can lose you a couple of games a year, and you can win with special teams. So, we got about 4 minutes left. ADs that were at SWAC Football Media Day, what was the participation? Because, I'm doing a radio show, but I can see some, as they're moving around. Was UAPB, Hines, was he there?
Yes, Hines was there. I spoke with our athletic director. I spoke with Ashley Robinson. He was there. So let's start with the East. Derek Horn was there. I saw Ashley Robinson. Valley's AD was there. Byron Hicks, Alabama A&M's AD was there, and Alabama State's AD was there. She really wasn't visible, but she was there. I saw her.
I saw her when I was leaving to get into the car and head back to Baton Rouge.
Correct. On the western side, Dr. Ponton, AD at Grambling, he was there. I interviewed Fred Washington, the AD at Prairie View. He was there. Hines.
I got a story about Fred Washington, but I'll have to tell that next week.
Roman Banks was. I didn't see Roman Banks was.
I didn't see him either.
Okay.
So it looks like only one AD wasn't there.
Yeah. And that's good. I mean, because I do think the ADs want to get their stories told in terms of where they are with their programs. And I try my best to get as many on as possible. I know them all for the most part, with the exception of Fred Washington, AD of Prairie View. I had not interviewed him. I had not even spoken to him until Media Day, and he was just talking about what Prairie View has done academically and trying to get students to the next level, wherever that is, whether it's professionally and some even as far as athletically is concerned. So he was very cerebral, and I was really impressed with some of the things that he said. He was kind of our last interview at Media Day.
Yeah. Well, I have to talk to Coach Banks. If you'd have asked me, I didn't see Banks and I didn't see Hines, but you saw him, so that was 9 out of 10 were there.
Yep, he was there.
I don't have to call Coach Banks the ghost, but maybe he had a legitimate. But I hadn't seen him I've never seen him there, but he hasn't been AD, 5 or 6 years. So that's something I'll ask about. Well, Charles, football is in the air. We can smell it. It's here now, basically. Appreciate you coming on, as always, and we look forward to talking with you again very, very soon. Have a great weekend.
I appreciate it. For us, camp starts August 2nd, so that's right around the corner.
Awesome. You're right. July 31st, Southern University reports. And I think everybody else right around that time or around the 1st or the 2nd. But have a great weekend. Want to thank Brandon B.J. Jones of HBCU Game Day, Corey Diaz, Monroe News Star, and, of course, Charles Edmond and Dr. Michael Prince. Make sure you tune in next Saturday at 10 a.m. for another edition of the Carlos Brown Show. Always heard exclusively right here on the Open Mic Broadcast and Network and Spreaker.com. Until that time, as always, peace and God bless.